Week 7 of the NFL season is here. By the time you're watching this, to be fair, it's probably already started with Thursday night football in a riveting matchup between the Broncos and the Saints. But we're here to talk us through the Sunday slate of games, plenty of them as well, and another London game to boot. My name's Luke Elder. Wearing a black shirt this time is my good friend Tom Collins.
Yeah, you stole my intro. I was going to say that no matter what you said. I was going to say, just for clarification, today it's black, guys, after the whole polo debacle on Thursday Night Football podcast. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. I am wearing a grey polo, not a green one. But yeah, we're going black today. And it's not because I'm mourning anything. I'm ready to celebrate. I think we're going to have a great week.
I think so as well. We're going bigger. We're going bigger than Turf and Touchdowns has ever been before. So stay tuned. We've got more selections than we have in recent weeks. Not because we've tried to, because we genuinely fancy that many. It's going to be a big week on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. Stay tuned. Hit subscribe down below. Thank you to everyone who subscribed last week. We're going for 300 this week on the subscriber front. But thank you to everyone who watched last week as well, as we'll dive in with things. Last week it was a good one. From the last 16, I think, on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. But last week we started slow. They had us in the first half. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, London was not good for us, was it? I mean, normally London's pretty good for us. You have an angle and it normally works, and London's okay for me generally. But it didn't work last week. However, it got better as the day went on Sunday, and obviously into Monday as well.
Absolutely. We had Amon-Ra St. Brown, anytime touchdown scorer. Chase Brown, anytime touchdown scorer. Jahmyr Gibbs, he hit the over on his rushing yards. The Bengals, they were minus 3.5. They landed, and I've forgotten the other one. It was one of mine.
Chase Brown, was it?
No, said that one.
Can't remember. Can't remember.
That was another one. It won. That's all we need to know. But we're looking to return that back to, well, not back to. We're looking to go 100% this time over. Let's do What on Earth, because we forgot that last week. I'm going to let you go first, Tom. What is your What on Earth segment?
Yeah, well, I didn't actually have one last week, so I'm quite glad we forgot about it. Week 5 was good for me. Week 6, similarly, quite good. There wasn't anything that I was watching on Red Zone or on Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football where I thought, what on earth is going on here? Apart from one thing, and it was nothing to do with any bets. It's just, what on earth, Dallas Cowboys? This team, right? Everyone thought this year Dallas were going to be one of the leading playoff contenders. Obviously, there's huge pressure on Dallas being America's team, the owner being extremely forceful on his players to perform well, and his head coaches. They were just kind of expected to do well in the division, get to the playoffs, and hope for a Super Bowl run. We know what usually happens. They get to the playoffs and they falter. But what on earth, Dallas? They conceded 47 points to the Detroit Lions. Now, we both thought the Lions would win that game. We tipped Lions players as player props, both of which won. So that the result wasn't the bit that I'm worried about. 47 points, sorry. I mean, what is the defense doing? This defense was supposed to be one of the best in the leagues. And the offense, 9 points. 9 points. An offense with CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, plenty of other weapons, Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott. I could keep going on. 9 points. I mean, this was ridiculous. And just to top it off, and the reason why it's a what on earth, it was Jerry Jones's birthday. In the Dallas Stadium, Jerry sat there just watching his team capitulate in front of him. What on earth, Dallas?
I'll tell you who is good, though. Brandon Aubrey.
He is very good.
He's pretty good, though, isn't he? They got a good kicker. Tank Dell, my player of the day last week. That was the other one I forgot.
Yes.
Yeah. You know who wasn't good or will ever be a player of the day, though? Will Levis. What's going on? You were good last year. You hit DeAndre Hopkins like 2 or 3 times in the same game for massive touchdowns. What's happened this year? The Tennessee defense is good. They've surrounded you with good weapons. Last week, right, Calvin Ridley, on a fantasy perspective, had 0.9 points from one rush. Oh, maybe he didn't get targeted. 8 targets. You didn't hit Calvin Ridley on a single target against Indianapolis, who are not great against the pass. I don't know what's going on with Will Levis. He's gone from comical to bad to comical to worse this time around. What on earth is going on, Will Levis? Sort it out. Let's go into this week where Will Levis will not be featuring, maybe in a negative standpoint, but we'll look at the London game because we're going to go for it again. We have got one play each in the London game. Tom, I will let you go first. For years and years, I have spouted that tight ends in London games do very, very well. We saw Evan Engram do it last week. You've never fully signed up to that, so you're not gonna go tight end here, are you?
To quote what a wise man once said, watch out for tight ends in London. And that wise man is yourself. And no, I've never really bought into it, to be honest. I just thought it was a theory that you had. But I have watched over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's working. It is working. Evan Ingram last week was the leading receiver in the whole game. He was fantastic for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars staying over in London to play at Wembley this Sunday against the New England Patriots. It is not a good game in terms of quality on show. These two teams are pretty poor. That being said, it could be time for your tight end angle. And I like Hunter Henry in this matchup. Everyone's going to be looking at Evan Ingram. The Jags, I think, are 5.5 point favourites in the matchup, so people are expecting Jacksonville to buck this trend of defeats. But I kind of like the New England side of things. I think Jacksonville will go ahead early. They've been in London for a couple of weeks now. They're used to the climate and the conditions different over here to what it is in Florida. And obviously they played in London last week, so they've got a good game plan. New England coming across, they may go down early, but that means they'll throw the ball more. Hunter Henry, the current receiving yards line is 29.5. I like the over here. It's at 10 to 11 at the moment with the UK firms. Look, there are plenty of reasons why. Not just your flimsy argument of tight ends doing well in London, though I do agree it does work. The Jacksonville's got torn open by Cole Kmet last week. 2 touchdowns, 5 catches, 70-plus yards. He was the Bears' best receiver last Sunday. The week before, Mo Alley Cox, 2 catches, but for 50 yards and a touchdown. The Colts don't target tight ends, so that stat line just stands out despite the fact he only had a couple of catches. 3 weeks ago, Dalton Schultz for the Houston Texans and Cade Stover, a guy that doesn't even see the ball regularly, 60 yards between them for the Texans against the Jags. The Jaguars are just giving up yardage to tight ends. Bearing in mind, New England don't have many offensive weapons. You're going to talk about one in a second, who is their number one weapon, aside from the running back, Ramondre Stevenson. But Hunter Henry's going to see his fair share. Last week, on Drake May's NFL debut, he had the second most targets in the game for the New England Patriots with 5. He had 3 catches. If he gets a similar amount of targets, similar amount of catches this week, I think he's going to hit his over. So I like Hunter Henry over 29.5 versus the Jaguars at 10 to 11 in the London game this week. Hopefully we're celebrating a winner in London.
I was very close to putting Hunter Henry up, I'm going to be honest. It was between Hunter Henry and Evan Ingram, obviously on the tight end side of things. Would you like to know a really cool stat?
I would.
So far, every starting tight end that's played in a London game this year has hit the overs.
Yep, I love it. And it's going to continue.
Johnny Munt, Tyler Conklin. Last week, Cole Kmet went crazy and got 2 touchdowns. And obviously, Evan Ingram had a big week as well. Tight ends in London, they just work. Slot receivers aren't too bad either. I'm going to go for Demario Douglas on my London look. Over 42.5 receiving yards, 4 to 5. Drake May played last week. Drake May looked okay, to be honest. For his first start in the NFL, I was quite impressed with what Drake May put out. I know he had a couple of picks, but he also managed to found Keyshawn Butte down the field and managed to get a big touchdown, but he was solid. Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas, however you want to call him, he's begun to take over in New England after a solid rookie campaign last year. He's had 9 targets and 59 or more yards in 3 of the last 4 games in a New England offense. That's very, very good. They're still an up-and-coming offense. They're a very young one as well. 9 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown in his sole game with Drake May. Obviously, that was last week. However, the rapport is there with Drake May. There was a quote going around. Drake May said, "You can't guard Pop in a post box." Something along those lines. Drake May loves himself some Pop Douglas. Against the Jets, Drake May came in just at the end of the game, just to get a bit of experience. He completed 4 passes. 2 of them were completed to Demario Douglas. He completed 4 passes for 22 yards. 20 of those yards on the 2 plays went to Demario Douglas. They just seem to work together. Jacksonville are awful against the pass. They're allowing a league worst 276.7 yards per game. Demario Douglas, 42.5 receiving yard line. That is too low. Go over on Pop Douglas. I can't believe we're both taking 2 receiving angles from the New England Patriots.
Yeah, the offense for New England has been awful this year, and anything good that they've done has come on the ground. So it does seem a little bit left field, but the fact that we've gone both kind of similarly down the same angle here, that Jacksonville may get out early. Drake May is very much a pocket passer, so we'll be looking for his targets. We're looking at the 2 main targets for New England here. I think they're both going to hit the overs, to be honest. And I hope Demario does anyway, because I've got him in one of our fantasy leagues. as supposedly a backup, but he's actually in the starting lineup now. So hopefully we're both celebrating after London this week compared to last week. And by the way, just a quick heads up to anyone watching. You may have been watching our podcast for the first time here. We do round up all selections at the end. We have plenty that we're going to quickly go through in this podcast. If you want to listen to the analysis, please do stay on board for the whole video. But if you want to recap and want to know all our selections at the end for your bets, then just wait to the last minute and you'll see them all there.
And also, on a Sunday, we do a roundup, effectively, of any comments or questions on social media, at Turf Touchdowns on Twitter, on YouTube. Obviously, just leave a comment down below. We get back to you as quick as we possibly can. The other night, on Monday Night Football, we managed to put up 2 extra winners that we're not counting towards our own profit loss, but Breece Hall finally did us some good. Here, the overs and also the over on receiving yards. The curse has been lifted. It's not been quite lifted, though, in Miami. Not just yet. They reckon Tua's going to come back this season, but Tyreek Hill is quite good. However, he's not been fantastic recently because Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson have been playing quarterback. Now, Tyler Huntley, he's still going to be, I believe, the starter. That's been what everything is pointing to work towards. So far, Tyler Huntley's thrown for 96 and 194 yards in his 2 starts. They've been against good defenses, though. They've been against Tennessee and New England. Both of those are hard teams to move the ball against. He looked terrible against Tennessee, but we'll move on from that. He looked much better against New England. Indianapolis have regularly been just torched by wide receivers, especially outside guys. Matthew Betts at the Fantasy Footballers podcast put up the stats last week. Before Calvin Ridley just did nothing because of Will Levis. But George Pickens against Indianapolis, 7 catches for 113 yards. Roma Dunze, 6 catches for 112 yards. Nico Collins, 6 catches for 117 yards. And Brian Thomas, 5 catches for 122. Outside guys and deep guys dominate against Jacksonville. They allowed a 85-yard play and a 61-yard play to Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk 2 weeks ago in the same game. 44 and 47-yard plays to DJ Moore and Roma Dunze again in the same game. I'm not expecting that sort of massive production, but you're not expecting that from Tyreek Hill. He's no longer the sort of person for this part of the season where his line's going to be, I think for the opening game, it's something like 99 receiving yards. 55 and a half receiving yards is all you need from Tyreek Hill. He can make stuff happen against Indianapolis. I have enough faith that Tyler Huntley can get him to that stage. So take one of the league's best receivers, take Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to do okay this week. Over 55 and a half receiving yards at 10-11. I didn't envisage starting off the podcast going for a Patriots receiver and at the moment a Dolphins receiver, but that's what we're doing, Dom.
Yeah, it looks like you've gone for 2 offenses that are struggling at the moment, but you have gone for 2 players who are, I would say, the playmakers of their team. So they could both easily hit the overs, even in one catch, to be honest. The lines are so low. And as you say, Tyreek has been known as being basically wide receiver 1 in the whole NFL for the last couple of years. Surely if he has anything like a game that we kind of expect from Tyreek, albeit with a limited offense and different QB, then he should hit the over there. I don't trust Miami. It's the only reason I haven't bet in that game, but I can certainly see where you're coming from. I'm going to stick with a couple of star receivers, actually, for my next 2 plays, going on the same lines as you, but different games. I'm going to start with A.J. Brown. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to New York to play the Giants. I think they're 3-point favorites in the matchup. Should be quite a good game. 2 teams that, well, the Giants just aren't very good, but the Eagles have been a little bit disappointing so far this year. A.J. Brown's only played 2 games. First game came in Brazil, which obviously wasn't ideal. They played the Packers that day. He's a stud wide receiver. He proved it down in Brazil. 119 yards, a touchdown, plenty of catches. But he got injured. That meant that he missed the next 3 or 4 games. They had the bye week. He came back last week against the Browns. Yeah, the Browns are terrible, but he still went for 116 yards and a touchdown. So 2 games this year, 119 yards and a touchdown, 116 yards and a touchdown. He is fresh. He's healthy now. This is the number 1 receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. Don't get it confused with Devontae Smith. The Giants are shocking. I keep saying, I said it last week when I put up the Bengals on the handicap and they covered. The Giants scored just 7 points and the Bengals had pretty much a field day. They didn't score as many as I thought, but they were still dominant throughout the match. Jalen Hurts is going to look the way of A.J. Brown. I actually thought the line here for receiving yards would be more like 85. It's 70.5. A.J. Brown so far in 2 games would have cleared that by 40 plus yards. He's going to do it again against the Giants. So take A.J. Brown over 70.5 receiving yards at 10-11 against the Giants. And I'll move swiftly on to my third bet, which It hurts me to say because it's against the Packers and it's not putting up a team to beat the Packers. Look, I want the Packers to win. They're my side. I'm not going to do that. However, you shouldn't bring loyalty into betting at any point. So I like Stephon Diggs anytime touchdown at 11-8, which I thought was a very fair price. Consider it a long shot because it's odds against the Green Bay Packers this week. There is a good reason for this, aside from the fact that Nico Collins is out. The Houston Texans have a high-powered offense. Stephon Diggs is now wide receiver 1. They're going to have to score points on the Packers because the Packers' offense is decent and firing on all cylinders right now, even if Jaden Reed may not play. So they're going to, they've got all that going for them and Stephon Diggs as well. But the main reason here is the trends. Stephon Diggs used to be with the Minnesota Vikings way back when. He then obviously joined the Buffalo Bills, and now he's with the Houston Texans. When he was with the Vikings, the Packers are divisional rivals, so they ended up playing each other 2 times a year. Stephon Diggs has therefore played the Packers 10 times. In his last 8 games against the Packers, he scored 9 touchdowns. That equaled 1 touchdown in every game and 2 in one game. This guy finds the end zone against Green Bay. As much as I hate to say it and see it, he finds the end zone. I'm taking Stephon Diggs to do it again. Trends like this tend to roll on. When a player has success against defensive scheme and coordinator and coverage, tends to keep having that success. So give me Stephon Diggs anytime touchdown at 11-8 against the Packers, and then a Packers win.
I was going to say, how sad will you be when Stephon Diggs catches the game-winning touchdown?
It will be the most bittersweet moment in my turf and touchdowns career.
Yeah. Oh, Stephon. What you guys will not understand is that we have a sort of running order, a script per se that we stick by. And what I didn't realize when I started talking about Tyreek Hill is that I went away from that script. So we're jumbling it all up. if you watch Tom's face, you might see him just go. Because Tom is the person who puts together the running order. But I'm going to go for my next one. Then I'm going to loop back because we're going to attack the same game. But nice. I'm going to attack the running game this time around. And the first comment I've got down is that Will Levis needs the ball out of his hands because he is terrible. Which leads you to Tony Pollard, who I think is going to have a very good week. Over 63.5 rushing yards is his line. Tyjae Spears is likely inactive in this game. I don't think he'll play. Even if he does, he's been banged up, and I don't think he's going to be a massive sort of thorn in the side of Tony Pollard. Not like he has been this year. Tony Pollard has been taken over. He's had under 16 carries once in 5 games this year and under 62 yards once. The line's 63.5. That's absolutely fine. And he takes on a rushing defense who are awful. Buffalo are really not good against the run. So far, Breece Hall, 18 carries, 113 yards. Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 199. Okay. Majority of those came on literally the first play of the game when he housed it from deep inside their own territory. Travis Etienne, 11 carries for 68 yards. Devon Achane in week 1, 22 carries for 96 yards. And then, just in case that wasn't enough, and the numbers aren't quite as impressive, to Cam Akers and Daria Gumbuale, who were picking up things for Houston, they combined together for 72 yards. And Gumbuale looked terrible when doing so, but Cam Akers looked okay. But 72 yards to those two guys. Tony Pollard is going to do just fine this week. Over 63.5 is absolutely the way that I'm happy to play things. And it's also another person that Tom's got on his fantasy team.
Yeah, you're just rooting for me this week. I can feel it. I'll be very happy again if you cover. I don't want this to be another high-fiving show where we're just celebrating each other's picks before they've actually won. But I hope that wins. Tony Pollard is a guy that has done very well this year. Did you see that run he had last week against the Colts? I think that it was 10-7 to Tennessee at the time. The Colts obviously went on to win the game. And it was 3rd and 19 near the goal line. And Tony Pollard ran it in for a TD. How has this guy done that?
He's looked good.
Yes.
I mean, let's not forget, this is a guy that in fantasy football drafts last year was a first-round pick. He was being taken every single time effectively in the first round. Things didn't go right. He said he wasn't healthy until week 11, and then he got good. And he's been fantastic this year for Tennessee. Speaking of high-fiving, we forgot to do one thing.
Victory sip. I do actually need a sip.
Yeah. Both player of the days landed last week, so...
Up the Bengals.
That is some good water. By the way, if you followed us in on the victory on the play of the day, you get to victory sip with us as well. So whatever drink you get, you can rewind it right now if you didn't do it just then and just, celebrate. Let's go back in time because we're going to go back in the running order and we're going to go towards the Detroit Lions game. They are taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, as we speak, are 1.5-point favorites, Tom.
Yeah, so this is the last 6 p.m. kickoff that we've both got selections for. The later picks that are coming up in the podcast are for the 9:30s or Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, etc. Now, this is the best game of the day, isn't it? I mean, the Minnesota Vikings are one. Well, I say that the Chiefs are playing the 49ers, but it is one of the two best games of the day. Definitely the best game in the 6 p.m. slate. Minnesota Vikings 5-0. They're one of just two teams who are unbeaten so far in the season. The Detroit Lions have come into this matchup on the back of an incredible victory over the Cowboys, which I've already talked about. These two teams are very good. The whole of the NFC North is very good. Maybe just Chicago are just good, but the whole division is good. This matchup is going to determine who's going to probably win the division. I think it will be the Lions come the end of the year. And therefore, they need to beat Minnesota. Otherwise, Minnesota have a 2-game advantage on them in the divisional standings. Now, I understand why the Vikings are favoured. I understand why they're getting a lot of hype. They are unbeaten. Sam Darnold's looked really good. But they have played some poor teams. I mean, they've beaten a couple of good ones. They've beaten the 49ers and the Packers, I believe. But in that game, the Packers definitely should have beaten Minnesota. There were turnovers. Detroit, I think, have a better offense. They did have a better defense before Aiden Hutchinson went down with a broken leg for the year, which could harm this selection. But I'm taking Detroit Lions on the money line. They're not favoured in here at 21-20 currently. They are 1.5 points underdogs. That line could change. The money line price could change, but I'll take them right now money line. I just think their offense is better. This could become a shootout. Jared Goff has been great this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who you're going to talk about in a second, great. Jahmyr Gibbs, brilliant. David Montgomery, again, unstoppable. Sam Laporta, the best tight end in the league. Like, there is no downside to this offense. Jameson Williams, the O-line is good. The whole offense is fantastic. They're going to score points. The defensive side is maybe where they concede and maybe where they could lose this game. But I just prefer Detroit. I think they'll win this, and I think they'll go top of the division and probably win the NFC North when it comes to the end of the year. So Detroit Lions, money line against the Minnesota Vikings, 21-20 is my fourth play on Sunday.
I was very close to joining you, honestly, on this. I think Detroit take this ball game as well. As you mentioned, the Lions are 4-1, the Vikings are 5-0. I think this is almost approaching must-win territory for Detroit. You don't want to let a division rival get 2 wins up on you and a win over you early on in the season. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is quite good, much like Tyreek Hill is. Over 74.5 receiving yards is the line for Amon-Ra St. Brown. His expectancy has dropped so far this year because he's not been as involved, but that's because the offense has become better rounded. They've used the run game far more pressingly in the early part of the season. They've got David Montgomery, they've got Jahmyr Gibbs. Why wouldn't you use the run game more? This might be where that stalls, though. The Vikings are a really, really good run defense. They have only allowed 2 50-plus rushing or running backs so far this year on the ground. Jordan Mason and Josh Jacobs, they are 2 real workhorse running backs as well. I think even Josh Jacobs got like 51 yards, so he limped over it. Jordan Mason is the only running back to have a real good game against the Vikings so far this season. So the Lions might just have to pass the ball a little bit more. And when you're looking to pass the ball, you're going to look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the main guy on this offense. I know they've expanded. Jameson Williams has looked good. Sam Laporta is coming back after a slow start. I still think Amon-Ra St. Brown is absolutely the guy in this offense. They blew out Dallas last week, as we spoke about. They still forced him a touchdown deep in the game. Myself and Tom were talking about this. This was one of Tom's selections last week, and we're like, Amon-Ra St. Brown's in this game, you know. Jared Goff just threw it to him. He was going to get the touchdown. I think he felt left out, honestly, but he managed to get it. I like that Tom coming into this week.
Mate, it was the best moment of the whole week. You guys should have seen our WhatsApp chat. I was going ballistic. It was crazy. I thought it was dead. I thought Amon-Ra St. Brown was never going to get the TD. They were up huge. They were running the ball. And then suddenly, Jared Goff threw the ball to Amon-Ra, and there was celebratory scenes, I promise you. So, this is a guy that's in my good books right now.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown hopefully will be in mine after this week. He's not had the season that you would have hoped that Amon-Ra St. Brown would have had so far, but he has still had a couple of big games. He got 75 yards against Tampa. He got 119 yards against Arizona. So far against Minnesota, they've not been good against the pass. Brilliant against the run. Awful against the pass. So far, Deebo Samuel, 110 yards. Stephon Diggs, 94 yards. In the same game, Nico Collins, 86 yards when the Texans got blown out as well. Jaden Reed, 139 yards for the Packers in the same game. Dontavian Wicks, 78 yards. Garrett Wilson, 101. For that, the stipulation of me reading out the stats were 75 yards and above. I think even Mike Evans might have had a big game or something like that along the way. But there have been tons of receivers who have just got yards upon yards. The one thing on the Vikings, they're harder to score on. In the red zone, they're absolutely fine. But yards, they will give up so many to you. Amon-Ra St. Brown, over 74.5 receiving yards is a bet for me. And we talk about previous history playing against teams. Last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously played Minnesota twice, being division rivals. 144 yards and 106 yards. I will absolutely take that. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to absolutely torch Minnesota. Whether he gets a touchdown, I don't know. For my bet, I don't really care, Tom.
No, you don't need the touchdown. You just need the overs, and I like it. I'll be cheering on Amon-Ra again. And to be honest, I want the Lions to win. As a Packers fan, I don't love either team, and I would like them both to lose if possible, but that's not going to be the case. So I'd like the Lions to win, at least open up the division even more. Should we move on to 9:30 kickoffs?
Let's do that because we've both still got two selections to come. I'm going to start things off in the 9:30 kickoffs because that's what the running order says, and that's what I'm now reading. I like George Kittle. I hate the Niners, so I'm not going to say that. George Kittle's great, though. Big fan.
That was the biggest U-turn I've ever seen, by the way. I
don't love him. I hate them. I wish them nothing but the worst. But George Kittle, good dude. Like him. Over 48.5 receiving yards against the Chiefs this week, I think is very, very low. It's 10-11 at the moment. And you're thinking, Luke, what are you doing? The Chiefs are a fantastic defense. They were last year. They are this year. They're shutting down guys left, right, and center. And I hear you. I understand entirely. Except against tight ends, they're not. They're good in all other facets of the game. Against tight ends, they are allowing 81.8 yards per game to the position. They are, as I say, a solid defense, but their records against tight ends looks better as the damage was done early. Earlier on in the year, they had Mike Gesicki, who had a big game. They had Kyle Pitts, who I think had a big game against them as well, and one or two others. But in recent weeks, they've managed to be okay against tight ends. However, keep this in mind. These are the tight ends that they faced. Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, who did get a touchdown on them, Will Disley, and Hayden Hurst. They're the four tight ends that have got catches on the Chiefs. And look, they're serviceable tight ends. They're never going to be superstars in the NFL. To those guys, they've allowed 11 catches, 74 yards, and that touchdown to Foster Moreau. George Kittle this season, so far, through 5 weeks, has got 5 touchdowns to his name. He's gone over this line 3 of the last 4 weeks with 6, 8, and also 12 targets as well. I think George Kittle is going to have another very big week against the Chiefs. He's very much a name to watch out for. He might find the end zone once again, but much like I said about Amon-Ra St. Brown, is that I don't really care on that part. I think he's going to take the Chiefs apart, and he'll have another big game. I said through 5 weeks as well. I obviously meant through 6 weeks, but he's still having a very, very good season. And I'm going to move on to my final play as well, just while we're here before we get Tom's final two. I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers, which did us quite well, actually, earlier on in the season. We looked at Chuba Hubbard on the overs on the rushing yards. He absolutely crushed that. This week, though, the Washington Commanders are taking on the Carolina Panthers. Now, Washington, as we've said from pretty much start to finish so far in the Turf and Touchdown podcast this year, they are terrible on the defensive front. On all of it. Doesn't really matter. They don't excel in any part of it. They're very good on offense. They score a lot of points. For fantasy, brilliant. But they allow tons of points. Running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, doesn't matter. In particular, though, wide receivers. Give me Deontay Johnson, who at the start of the year, if you had him in fantasy, you're probably thinking about dropping him. But since Andy Dalton has come in, the Carolina offense has been completely turned around. I'm not going to say they're a brilliant offense, but they're good. They're an offense that you can rely on. You know who the guys are going to be. And Deontay Johnson is the number one guy in this Carolina offense as well. So far, he's accrued 14 targets, 13 targets, 6 and 10 in just the last 4 weeks, effectively, when Andy Dalton took over. He got 78 more yards or more in 3 of the last 4 weeks as well. The only down week was against Chicago. Chicago are good against the pass. There's no real issue regarding that. And it wasn't a going day for Carolina whatsoever. And as I say about Washington, they're a really poor defense, especially against wide receivers. We saw that last week with Zay Flowers getting 132 yards. That was a bounce back game for him. We mentioned it earlier in the year when we took advantage of things with Malik Neighbors. He got 127 yards against this defense. Jamar Chase we used against the Washington defense as well. He got 118 yards and also a score as well. The reputation was saved a little bit by this defense against Arizona, who just had a massive off day. Whatever happened to Arizona that day, I don't know. And they played against Deshaun Watson as well, who is absolutely terrible at playing football. I don't know what's happened to him whatsoever. But I do think Washington returned to type this week, and I do think Deontay Johnson has a big week. 67.5 yards is the line. Again, we're going to go over on that. Again, is 10 to 11. They're my 6, Tom. I absolutely love my 6 this week. Round off yours, please.
Yeah, I've got 2 left. Tip number 5 for myself is the Los Angeles Rams -6.5 against the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a 10 to 11. The current handicap is 6.5. There's no need for looking at the alternate point spread. It's the main handicap. The line may change. Numerous reasons for that. I'll get into the Raiders side in a second, but Cooper Kupp is currently questionable. If he is confirmed as playing, the Rams may be 7.5 point favorites. Hopefully, you'll see this while they're still 6.5 points. Hammer that line. I think it's a good line. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders are just terrible. They've been awful all year. Do not ask me how they came from 10 points down in the fourth quarter to beat the Baltimore Ravens in week 2. I have no idea. The Ravens are one of the best teams in the league. They held a commanding advantage. The Raiders somehow came back. No idea. Since then, they've only got one other win. That was a crappy win against the Browns. You've already talked about how bad the Browns are. They have losses to the Carolina Panthers, who have only got one win on the year. The Chargers, who I don't think are very good, though they have put up a fair few wins. The Broncos and the Steelers. 4 teams who I just think are very average to terrible. They've also just traded away their star wide receiver in Devontae Adams. So who knows what's going to happen with the Raiders. They're also on the second QB, and it's not even a good QB in Aiden O'Connell. Gardner Minshew's been benched. Everything's going wrong in Las Vegas right now. They travel to Los Angeles to face the Rams. The Rams coming off the bye week. They're fresh. As I say, could be getting Cooper Kupp back. Matthew Stafford, very good QB. Kyron Williams has been dynamite this year, touchdown in every game. I was going to put him up actually for a touchdown, but then I saw his price of 8 to 15, and I thought that would be a bit ridiculous to put up on a podcast. But he'll probably find the end zone again, and he's been rushing for basically 100 yards over the last 3 weeks consistently. So if he does that again, the Rams are going to be able to move the ball. The Raiders can't stop the run. They're 7th worst in the league against the run. They're one of the worst teams, 6th worst in the league against points allowed per game. I just don't see how the Rams don't win this by a touchdown or more. They're just miles the better team with more momentum, more emphasis coming off the bye that they need to get a win. The Raiders are sulking because Devontae's gone. Give me the Rams -6.5 at 9:30 against the Raiders. And my final selection, and please do come back to this podcast, by the way, when it gets to Monday Night Football. We're a day on from Sunday, and you probably want a Monday night pick. This one wouldn't be for your Sunday Ackers because it's obviously on Monday. But on Monday night, the Ravens play the Buccaneers. Another great game. 2 high-powered offenses putting up a lot of points recently. The Buccaneers last week got a 50-burger up on the Saints. So this should be a nice game. Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in the matchup. Don't necessarily love that line, though I do think the Ravens will win. What I do love is Lamar Jackson over 50.5 rushing yards at 10 to 11. This matchup just suits him greatly. The Bucs defense is not great. They allow teams to put yards on them. We saw Spencer Rattler last week in the second quarter put up 27 points on the Bucs with his passing game, but he was also running the ball. Alvin Kamara wasn't as potent as usual, but he was still pretty potent in that quarter. Lamar this year, 4 out of 6 games, he's recorded 54 or more rushing yards. That's a good percentage, 66%. If you like your mathematical equations, and 66% would equate to a much shorter price than 10 to 11, which is 55% on the current rushing yards line of 50.5. So if he hits that 54 plus, we put a tick in the box. It's another victory for Lamar. It's probably another victory for the Ravens. And hopefully, Luke, it ends a brilliant week for us in week 7.
I'm going to be honest, I'm exhausted.
I think everyone listening will be too.
Literally, pens down, just go note them all down.
Let's do a roundup.
We'll help you out. Yeah, we'll do the roundup, and then we'll do plays of the day. Actually, we'll do play of the day while we're going through it. Tom, I need more time to recover. You do your 6 now.
Sure, I'm going to read off the phone to make it as concise for you guys as possible. Right. Bet number 1, Hunter Henry for the New England Patriots against the Jacksonville Jaguars, over 29.5 receiving yards in the London game. That's an early kickoff, don't miss it. Number 2, AJ Brown over 70.5 receiving yards at 10 to 11 for the Philadelphia Eagles against the New York Giants. Bet number 3, Stephon Diggs anytime touchdown against the Green Bay Packers. That's at 11 to 8. He's good for a single, I would say. I always play my bets as singles, but if you're doing a multiple, I'd potentially leave that one out just because it's a bigger price and worth using as a single. Number 4, Detroit Lions money line just to beat the Minnesota Vikings. That's at 21 to 20. Then number 5, Los Angeles Rams -6.5 against the Raiders. That's at 10 to 11. And that is my play of the day. You'll get a banner coming up below me right now. And then number 6, Monday Night Football, Lamar Jackson over 50.5 rushing yards at 10 to 11 for the Baltimore Ravens against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 6 selections, hopefully at least 4 winners. 6 winners would be the goal.
Yeah, if there wasn't a banner there, Joe, you're fired.
Yeah, come on, Joe, man.
You like got one job. Just come on. My banner, hold it. Not yet. My 6, Demario Douglas in the London game over 42.5 receiving yards. Love that line. That's 4 to 5. Tyreek Hill over 55.5 receiving yards. I think he has a bounce back week. He got 69 yards in their most recent game before the bye. I think they can still take advantage of a Colts defense that is not great against receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, another star receiver, over 74.5 receiving yards in what should be a good game against the Vikings. I'll take Tony Pollard on the ground, over 63.5 rushing yards as well. He's had a very, very good season. I think he'll be the sole back as well with Tyjae Spears likely on the sidelines, and God, Will Levis, just don't give him the ball. We're also going to go for Deontay Johnson over 67.5 receiving yards at 10 to 11. And I haven't mentioned the player of the day yet, so that must mean it's George Kittle, who is going to go over 48.5 receiving yards. That's at 10 to 11 against the Chiefs, who have not been good against tight ends so far this season.
Big podcast, guys.
I thought six picks for both of us was fine, but it's not. It's too much. By the way, just to answer Scott's question again from the Thursday Night Football podcast, I love my 6 this week. Honestly, I'm going to be playing them in either trebles and up or fourfolds and up. I like to think I'm going to do okay this week, but we'll recap it. But 12 selections, Tom. Hopefully, we can somehow get 12 winners.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be amazing if we do. Obviously, it's unlikely that we get all 12, but hopefully we do get the majority of them go in, and you can pick and choose which ones you like if you want to play our bets, or if you're just interested in who we think is going to do well, then fantastic. You don't have to bet this week. But I think if we get 8 out of 12, that's good. That will be a level stakes profit between us. If we can get any more than that, fantastic, and we'll be celebrating in week 8. I hope you guys did enjoy the podcast, by the way. It's a long one. They won't always be this long, guys. They're usually going to be under 30 minutes, but we had a lot of fancies, so why not tell you all of our picks?
Yeah, if 12 win, we're forgiven on that part. We're absolutely fine. But if you did enjoy this episode, please subscribe down below. We produce 2 NFL videos every single week, the Thursday Night Football one and also the Sunday slate. And if you like your horse racing, we also do US horse racing previews. We've currently got 2 US horse racing previews online in the same video. But subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let us know your best plays of the week. Tom, I'm going to go take a lay down.
Yeah, I've got another podcast to do, so I can't do that. See you later, mate.
See you later. Until we next speak to you guys, stay safe, look after other. Goodbye.